I really didn't want to come and play this game and start doing reaction videos. It's absolutely not in my style, but I absolutely have to say something here. So I just want to take a look at this video by Dr. Ken Berry, who is a big influencer in the carnivore space, talking about the sugar diet, which is really having its kind of tipping point and blowing up in the last couple of weeks. It's a mixture of a number of things. The sugar diet, fundamentally, Cole Robinson is kind of popularizing it right now with Mark's Belly Bell, who's a bodybuilding guy with a great podcast. A lot of the science and a lot of the motivation behind it is rooted in the work that Anabology did. I interviewed him on another channel, the Patchwork Podcast. I'll link that in the notes to this video, around the honey diet and some of the science behind it. And a lot of people are talking about it. Fundamentally, it seems to be passing the bullshit sniff test where people are doing it and they're having remarkable results. I think there's a whole piece of science that people are missing that I can color in and we'll be talking about another time. But fundamentally, what I wanted to do is I got sent this video and I've looked at it a number of times. This is a leading carnivore influencer who is a doctor talking about this diet. And he's released this video just full of passive aggressive sarcasm and is like factually incorrect or focusing on absolutely like the wrong things. And so it just makes sense to me to take a look with you at some of the stuff he says and go over why it's either nonsense or absolutely like the wrong thing to look at. Yeah, his opinion aside, like there are pros and cons to eating a sugar heavy diet, but the points that he's raising don't fully make sense. And I'm a former carnivore. I think it can be fantastic for a number of reasons, especially if you have autoimmune issues you're trying to get down. It's a really good elimination diet for a number of people. It's absolutely helped them, manage their cravings, their hunger, their food noise. Like, if it works for you, fantastic. And I'm really a diet agnostic person. Obviously, I work with Patchwork. We do nutrigenomic screening, and a lot of the time people do carnivore diets and we flag in their genetics that actually everything that they're eating is highly inflammatory to them based on their genes. And that shows up in a number of places: poor sleep, losing hair, bad joints, horrific cholesterol numbers. And so I'm diet agnostic in general, but I did want to go through this one. I've done it on double speed, so please excuse the double speed of him talking, but we have to address some of these points.
Diet called the sugar diet. I'm Dr. Ken Berry, a family physician, and in this video, I'm going to reveal the truth, and I'm going to admit to you that the sugar diet may be the best fad diet I've ever seen in my career. Now, pay careful attention, because some of the things I say might confuse you if you're not paying careful attention. The fact that over 50% of adults in America are overweight and obese, this is evidence that we should all eat more sugar.
Okay, so first point there. He's trying to link the standard American diet and their existing obesity issues and weight issues to sugar intake, which I think is a little absurd if you look at the science that actually in America, sugar intake has gone down over the past 15 years, for one. And two, the standard American diet isn't primarily a sugar diet if you actually know anything about the sugar diet.
Like sugar, huh?
Is there sugar in syrup?
Yes.
Then yes.
The sugar diet is basically a low fat, because we all know fat makes you fat, a low fat, moderate to low protein, high sugar diet. Now, even though this is exactly like the standard American diet,
No, it's literally nothing like the standard American diet. It amazes me that he said that with a straight face. And I think that one of the reasons I've been driven to do this reaction video is this is a guy I used to follow. I've read his books. I have read his actual book. I've talked about it. I've shared it with people. I've watched his videos. To try and say that a high sugar diet is the standard American diet, one that is low in fat and moderate or low in protein is an American diet, is completely absurd.
this is unlike any diet you've ever heard of in your life.
It kind of is unlike any diet you've ever heard in your life. I remember last year when Anabology wrote an article saying, if you're going to fast, do it just eating sugar. I remember thinking that is one of the most absurd things I've ever read in my life. And no one has ever suggested that other than a vegan, but most people don't listen to vegans for a number of reasons. It's pretty new idea.
This diet has near miraculous results when it comes to weight loss. And we all know that's what we're really...
It seemingly does have near miraculous results when coming to weight loss. For some people that it works for. For a number of people it doesn't work. There's a whole number of reasons for that. Reactive hypoglycemia is absolutely awful to experience. And people are gaining a lot of weight in it, especially if you come from a keto or carnivore space and you have no glycogen stored in your muscles or your liver. You can easily gain 4 or 5 pounds in the course of 1 or 2 days if you start eating a high carbohydrate diet.
Here for, right? We want to lose 20, 30, 40 pounds. We could care less about our health. Who cares about glycation or A1Cs?
It's pretty hard to say that you have an easy 30 pounds to lose and you are also in peak health. Those two things don't get connected at the same time, unfortunately. If you have an easy 20 or 30 pounds to lose, there is no way that you're going to be near optimal health. That's one. Two, if you actually talk to people that go carnivore, for a number of reasons, the primary underlying reason always comes down to they just want to be lean and not think about food anymore, which is a completely reasonable thing to aspire to. I've been there. I have spoken to thousands of people over the past year who just don't want to deal with weight issues anymore. So I don't think it's totally fair to classify it that way, because most people talk about losing weight. That's why they go on the carnivore diet. They obsess over losing weight and they totally ignore or justify all of the other downsides and issues with just eating red meat.
These are insulin levels. Really, that's all just kind of academic foolishness.
Okay, insulin levels. I thought that one's pretty funny. People on a high sugar diet typically have lower insulin levels. They're fasting glucose, as an example, of people on a high sugar diet. I'm seeing numbers that are more averaging in the 60s and very low 70s, as opposed to the people I know that were carnivore or keto for a very long time, and their fasting blood sugar is in the 90s, if not 100s.
We all just want a quick weight loss fix.
It burns carbs. It just burns up all your carbs.
I just mentioned two words, glycation and insulin. These both sound like very boring medical words. You probably don't need to pay attention to at all. But let me go into them just a little bit so that you can say you do understand them, and then you can immediately forget what I'm about to say. So sugar glycates your cells and tissues in your body. This means it gums them up. The sugar sticks to your cells and to your tissues and makes them work less efficiently. Again, nobody cares about that because we're all just here to lose 20 pounds, right?
Don't think it's fair to say nobody cares about that, because if we want to talk about glycated tissues, the way you fundamentally measure that is with your HbA1c. That looks at effectively how much sugar is stored on your red blood cells. That's usually the focus of both people that do a high carbohydrate or high sugar diet to try and deal with type 2 diabetes, and also a lot of the carnivores.
I'm gonna lose 3 pounds.
So what a lot of people who are recommending...
Also, it's not necessarily about rapid weight loss. I mean, the people I have spoken to that are doing a high sugar diet or a sugar diet or the sugar diet they appreciate they're on a journey, but fundamentally it's not a rapid fix. It's only really going to be rapid if you do have an easy 100 pounds to lose, and then you're kind of in a place where that should be pretty simple. Should be pretty easy anyway. I say that with no judgment, just that like if you are carrying that much weight, it will come off a lot faster than if you're down at like 20-21% body fat.
The sugar diet don't know and also don't care about is that fructose, the sugar that occurs in fruit, super healthy. It's natural sugar. It's not like that artificial sugar made of sugar beets and sugar cane. It's natural sugar. It occurs in fruit, so therefore it's magically nutritious.
Any kind of fruit? Mango, pineapple? It isn't like there's safe fruit and then it's unsafe fruit.
Fructose is 7 times more glycated than glucose. And that's fact number one that the people recommending the sugar diet don't know, but that's irrelevant. Nobody cares about that. We're just here to lose some weight, right? So...
Okay, hold on. There's this weird word games he's just done with sugar and fructose, and he's going to do one in a second about fruit and fru, and they sound similar with fructose. And I don't know if it's that like he doesn't actually understand what fructose is or where it is in sugar and sucrose, or if he's just trying to, you can do something called smashing the box, where you just fill the box with words and try and get over someone's head. So I want to address 2 points here. One, sucrose is sugar, fundamentally. You can call it high fructose corn syrup. Biologically, they're all mostly the same. It's pretty much 50-50 glucose and fructose put together in one big molecule. Fructose is actually about 10 times as glycating as glucose. That's one. But two, your serum fructose is never anywhere near where your serum in your blood glucose is. So the fact that it is much more glycating is actually a bit irrelevant. I think your serum glucose is probably somewhere around like 4 to 6, and your serum fructose is like 0.1. So you're talking about something that would be like 40 times less in your blood. It doesn't really matter that it is more glycating in that context, because fructose just doesn't abundantly flow around your bloodstream in that way. It also is only really an issue when you are insulin resistant, and the fructose is then like building up in your blood and not moving and being used. The whole point of the sugar diet and the way it is structured and implemented is that like fructose is primarily burnt almost immediately and first. It doesn't just build up in your serum. In fact, it's funny that he never mentions this. One of the first diets ever invented or discovered to treat type 2 diabetes was something called the Kempner rice diet, where people were put on a pure rice diet, 100% carbohydrates, and it reversed their type 2 diabetes. So he's kind of like skipping a whole bunch of points here to try and make a point that doesn't really land for me.
Another fact that they don't know is that fruit juices and fruits and high fructose corn syrup, even though they have the syllable fru or fruc in their name, also contain glucose and sucrose. And some of them didn't believe
Why would you say glucose and sucrose if you knew what they were? Because sucrose has glucose in it.
me when I said that, and they looked it up and they found out I was right. Again, totally irrelevant.
People didn't believe you that fruit juices had glucose and then glucose and fructose in it. Who are you talking about, Ken? That is nonsense.
So when you're drinking a glass of orange juice, or as some of the sugar diet gurus out there recommend you do, drinking Coca-Cola, high fructose corn syrup, you're glycating the hell out of every cell and tissue in your body, not only with the glucose, which we can measure with a hemoglobin A1C. That's a test that your doctor might or might.
Okay, so pause. You're saying not only with the glucose, which you can measure with a HbA1c, you can only really measure it with a HbA1c. He's now going to say that you can't measure the glycation from fructose via HbA1c. I'm not sure that that's totally correct. 1, 2. Why would you be glycating the hell out of your red blood cells if your baseline blood sugar is much lower on a sugar-based diet than on a carnivore diet? I don't understand how it would be possible. If your fasting glucose and your fasting insulin is way lower, how that doesn't make any sense.
Might not order. It really doesn't matter because you're just here to lose weight.
Which also, a pause, right? If you look at Sean Baker's HbA1c, it's not like it ever really comes down. In fact, you talk to most carnivores, the HbA1c can come down to just below pre-diabetic or sit at pre-diabetic, and it sits there. And I actually think that's totally fine, right? As long as it's not getting high, people will just sit at like 5.6. But this idea that eating a almost purely sugar-based diet is going to increase your HbA1c is not quite right. That doesn't sit there. That isn't the reality that is seen in people.
But fructose glycates 7 times more readily than glucose, and fructose glycation or fructation is completely invisible to the A1C test. So you can't even measure the degree of fructose glycation in your body. Not that it matters. But so you're going to just drink a Coca-Cola, then drink some orange juice. It doesn't even have to be fresh squeezed. Eat lots of fruit, and you want to definitely not eat any saturated fat. Keep your fat intake very, very low. And on the sugar diet, they do recommend avoiding vegetable seed oils, and I think that's probably of no real particular concern or importance.
Okay, I have to pause there. That is one of the most disqualifying statements I've ever heard someone in this space, which I'd say is like alternative health or enlightened health space, try and make. In fact, polyunsaturated fats will exacerbate glycation to probably 100 times the level of glucose in your blood. Right? Like if you have the breakdown products of polyunsaturated fats, which come from seed oils, which will be in any form of seed oils, that will absolutely lead to advanced glycation end products and advanced lipid end products. It's such an absurd claim for him to have made that. To me, that discredited the entire conversation. You're talking about the standard American diet, which you think is high sugar, and then somewhere in there you're mentioning seed oils. The standard American diet is extremely high seed oils. It's extremely high fat and high carb. It's just such a disingenuous argument. Like all of these arguments are not fair or real. And I think there are actual valid arguments you can make against a high sugar diet. It's probably and most likely and is showing up to be like awful for your teeth as an example. But no, he's decided to somehow say that seed oils aren't an issue in this one.
But they recommend that, so you can do that if you want to. Now, again, you've all heard of sugar addiction, right? Sugar addiction is not real. All you have to do is talk to a representative from Coca-Cola or from Kellogg's, and they'll tell you sugar addiction is not real.
You need to know your good friend Miranda Hobbs has just taken a piece of cake out of the garbage and eaten it. You'll probably need this information when you check me at the Betty Crocker Clinic.
And so the people who I've talked to, the millions of people I've talked to on this YouTube channel about sugar addiction in the past, they're not really concerned about that. They just want to lose 30 pounds. They want to lose some weight really fast. They don't care if they're a sugar addict, and maybe you shouldn't care either. A sugar diet, if you're a sugar addict, which may or may not be real, that's going to really, really cause you to become more and more addicted to sugar. But who cares? Because it's a quick way.
Hold on. So, sarcasm aside, I think that it is fair to say that you can be addicted to foods. In the book Dopamine Nation, it's very clear you can become addicted to foods. And if you try and restrict those foods, but you still have access to them, you will get unnatural or disproportionate dopamine spikes when you get access to them. So when you go and eat that sugar, you're going to get a wild dopamine spike, which can lead to addiction or can be a sign of addictive behavior. Totally fair. That is the same with, right there, she talks about cake. Cake is not a high sugar product. Cake is a high sugar, high fat product. It's like saying, oh, I'm addicted to sugar, I eat donuts. Donuts are not a high sugar product. Donuts are fried. They are deep fried, usually in soybean oil, which is absolutely horrific for you, and triggers your endocannabinoid system and makes you have the munchies, just like if you smoke weed. It's not really fair. Also, if you actually talk to people that go on these high sugar diets, they do two things. They find that they have no binging after a while. It very clearly goes away. They have no cravings for sugar, basically, other than their inert or their innate bodies they're seeking more fuel. And there is an argument that glucose is the preferred fuel for the body and the brain. Even if you're on a carnivore diet, your body still requires glucose and you're producing it by tearing down your muscles. And that you have a evolutionary reaction to go and seek that out. I'm not actually arguing that that is the truth. I'm just saying that that could be a fair argument made. To somehow circle in that there's like a sugar addiction. You've talked to millions of people with sugar addictions. That's totally fair. I'm not discounting their experiences. But that sugar is inherently addictive, I think has been a fairly disproven idea, just that it alone is addictive as opposed to the environment in which you have become accustomed to eating it, and then also your history of restricting it.
Weight loss hack. Now, as I said earlier, everybody knows fat makes you fat. You can just ask any dietitian that works for the American Diabetes Association, and they'll tell you that eating fat makes you fat. So that's why the sugar diet is a low-fat diet, and that's why it helps for you to lose 20, 30 pounds so quickly. Now, it's irrelevant that there's not a single recorded society in the past, a successful society, that ever ate the sugar diet. No society ever ate lots of sugar and very low fat and moderate protein and had bad health outcomes. Well, actually, there's multiple recorded instances of that in archaeological literature, but that's irrelevant because that's in the past, and what we're looking at is the present, right now. What do you want to...
This is an odd one for me, but I always found this really frustrating with people that were carnivore or aggressively meat-based, and still now, that they try and hark back to some Paleolithic man from 200,000 years ago that makes their diet like absolutely optimal. I think you could definitely find ancient societies that eat high sugar diets and were well functioning. You can definitely find civilizations or let's say ethnic groups in the world in the past 100 years who lived on a very high carbohydrate, low fat diet and had phenomenal health outcomes actually. But I just found this argument's just kind of gross and very weird.
Put in your mouth. It's sugar. You want that sugar, and the sugar diet says that it's okay to eat or drink that sugar, so why the hell not? So if you've been following a low-carb, a keto, ketovore, carnivore diet, you can stop all that foolishness and just start following the sugar diet. And if you can't find a lot of resources out there on the internet about it, because really there are no PhD or MD influencers out there on the internet talking about the sugar diet at all, which some people would find weird and worrisome. Maybe if it were such a big deal and so healthy, you would think doctors would be talking about it, but that's foolishness. Nobody listens to doctors anyway.
Okay, so now this is like an appeal to authority, but a lot of his brand is literally against authority. I mean, his book is called Lies That My Doctor Told Me. So this was an odd set of arguments to make, but I think you can find there are plenty of doctors out there who advocate for an extremely high carbohydrate diet. I don't think they're right again. And this idea that if you're keto or carnivore, you can just go and have loads of sugar. Again, I think that no one's really making that case, and it's an insane thing to do to go from a ketogenic diet to a sugar diet. I personally did that as an experiment. I documented it pretty well. You are glucose intolerant. You make yourself insulin resistant and glucose intolerant on a ketogenic diet and a carnivore diet, and switching straight to a sugar diet is absolutely going to destroy your health in the short term. It's a pretty wild experience to have a full hypoglycemic episode that you do to yourself, and you're not in your own home. I've done that. I was out driving a car, and all of a sudden you start shaking and blacking out. It's like pretty terrifying. I don't think anybody should do that. I don't think anybody's really advocating for that. But the appeal to authority thing, I don't. Where does that come from, Ken? Your book was literally against the medical system, and you've in this video gone against the different diabetes associations and the different scientific bodies. So I'm a little lost on that one. That's an odd point to make.
Basically, if you're confused about the sugar diet and how you do it, you just go back to eating the standard American diet, because that's worked fine for me.
No, that is an absolutely ludicrous thing to say. That's so disingenuous. Millions of people for 20 years. We've all been eating the standard American diet. And a lot of people will say, well, that's why we got so fat. That's why we got so many cases of type 2 diabetes and fatty liver and metabolic syndrome. I would say, don't come at me with research. I want the latest fad, damn it. And the sugar diet is just that. Now, if you weren't... That was sarcasm. Don't come at me with research. I mean, the thing is, there is actually plenty of research that would support a high carbohydrate, low fat diet. If that fits with you and you want to do it. There's also plenty of research that says that a ketogenic diet is fantastic. There's plenty of research that says a plant-based diet is fantastic. Plenty of research that says a carnivore diet is fantastic. That's the thing. It's like there isn't an argument really, depending on how you want to cherry pick the data, there isn't really a good argument for any of the diets that exist. Anyway,
aren't already aware, this entire video is sarcasm. I think the sugar diet is the dumbest damn thing that I have heard of in a long damn time.
This is a really, I mean, that's fair. That's fair. That's a totally fair point. I get your conclusion. I think your sarcasm is to make a point. It's odd. It just comes across really gross because you make this point that you've spoken to millions of people that suffer from sugar addictions, but like there are also thousands, if not many more than that, people that are saying, hey, I tried a number of things, including carnivore for years. It got me to a certain point. It destroyed my metabolism. It destroyed my thyroid. I'm now trying to unpick that hole. I don't want to just survive on, say, 2,000 calories a day. You know, as a 165-pound man, you're supposed to be eating something like 3,300 calories a day, and they're trying to find their way out of that. Like, the whole point of getting people to go carnivore is getting them to turn away from doctors and some of the propaganda and these different medical societies that have questionable funding. It's like, I get his opinion. It's totally fair to make that conclusion at the end. I think the sarcasm just came out really weird for me, which is why I wanted to make this video. It just seemed really gross, right? There's really nothing more detestable to me than seeing somebody explain their experience and saying, you are wrong, you are incorrect, you don't understand what you're talking about, which is what this oozes of to me. And yeah, I deal with people on a daily basis their doctors just do not believe them. It's so absurd. It's so absurd to hear the symptoms that they bring to their doctor, and they say, I don't even need you to believe me. I just need you to run these tests. I'm looking to get prescribed this medication. This is the problem I have. And the doctor will say, no, I won't run those tests. I don't think you have those issues. I don't believe you. I won't refer you to an endocrinologist. It's completely insane. So anyway, I can see why this one has piqued my interest. My first reaction video ever, and I hope that you thoroughly enjoyed it. You do what you want to do. Hey, if you are curious on what you think you should be doing and you're interested in maybe basing it in some actual, like, real science based also on your fields, I work with a company called Patchwork. It's in my bio. I'll put it in the link in the video. We do nutrigenomic screening. We do it cheaper and better than everyone else in the world. We'll take your genetics and we will work out what foods you are genetically primed to thrive on, what foods will cause inflammation inherent to you, other sources of genetic inflammation, as well as what nutrient deficiencies you're probably prone to based on your genes. And we'll deliver it to you on a coaching call with a health coach, and we'll give you a great report and put you on the right track going forwards. Check it out, and I hope you enjoyed this one.